I started the Real Mental podcast because it bugs me when film and TV miss the mark about how mental health gets portrayed. Real Mental is a podcast where a film loving psychiatrist, that's me, talks to directors, writers, actors, and critics to help people figure out their life by getting to the truth about mental health in the movies. Welcome, Sean King O'Grady, to the Real Mental podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. I've been watching episodes of your new series, Suspicious Minds, and it's very, very interesting. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what got you into this project?
Yeah, so I'm Sean. I'm a filmmaker. I do a combination of fictional films or narrative films, as I typically call them, and documentaries. I kind of work across genres, and I'm always looking for the next story to tell. And that's actually where this project starts, is that I found Joel and Ian Gould's book, Suspicious Minds, The Truman Show Delusion, and Other Strange Beliefs, and thought that it would make a fantastic documentary series. And so we started adapting this into, we weren't quite sure if it was going to be a feature-length documentary or a series about the cultural influences of on delusions and psychosis in general. And then these AI delusions started popping up. And that's when we realized there was something really urgent here and some stories that we needed to tell immediately. And that's how we ended up at this YouTube/podcast series format, is realizing that we needed to get this out immediately while we could still make a difference as the world was trying to really figure out what was happening.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic because it's so new and yet we're getting a lot of information kind of moment to moment about how AI and this kind of interaction with chatbots is affecting people.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm getting now emails and calls from people that we've interviewed, people who are researchers. I've never worked on anything like this before, where we are releasing episodes and we are learning as the world is learning and as the experts in the field are learning. I mean, this is truly, obviously there are, and we can talk about this more, but there are a lot of things we can learn from other instances of delusions and psychosis. But this particular, I guess anything that's at the intersection of artificial intelligence and mental health truly is novel.
Yeah, and I'm obviously, as a psychiatrist, very interested in mental health, but my psychotherapy practice is mostly done. I mean, I have a very small practice right now. I do more consulting and other things now, but in my time as a psychotherapist, it wasn't an issue, right? In all my years treating people, AI didn't exist in this way. So people weren't having conversations with chatbots. So it never came up in my practice. And I'm imagining that new psychotherapists are encountering this kind of thing, or younger psychotherapists are encountering this thing with their patients who are coming in with some strange symptoms because of their interactions online.
Yeah, and obviously this is anecdotal. This is based on my conversation with a handful of psychotherapists. But what seems to be happening is, while the chatbot related delusions and psychosis are certainly happening, and if the data that's coming out from OpenAI is correct, it's happening on a mass scale. There are close to 1 billion users of ChatGPT, and they said close to 1% of those people are experiencing delusions or psychosis or signs of delusions or psychosis. But I still think that the number of therapists who are seeing people who are psychotic or delusional and it involves chatbots is probably still relatively low. But what I've found from the people I've been talking to is almost all of them have patients coming in who are receiving some sort of therapy-like guidance from their chatbots on their off days when they don't have therapy. And I think that's really concerning, and that's something that needs to be discussed as well, because as Nick Haber from Stanford talks about in our show and with the paper that he published, currently chatbots aren't good therapists.
Not surprising because, they're programmed to be completely affirming. That's one thing. And so they're not doing any reality testing. And so much of psychotherapy, aside from the affirmation, is reality testing. This is real, this is not real. This perception that you have is distorted. Cognitive behavioral therapy, the basis of that is dealing with people's cognitive distortions or false beliefs. So whether they're delusional false beliefs, which is at one extreme, or simply incorrect beliefs, cognitive behavioral therapy is there to help people recognize when their thinking is wrong or off and help them to correct it and be more in touch with reality. So if you're not having your reality testing done and you're not having that kind of clarification of your cognitive distortions, you can go down a rabbit hole and get into mental health trouble.
Yeah, there's a person who we speak to in this series. This episode's coming up in a couple episodes, but his wife was experiencing some potentially having a potentially delusional reaction with her chatbot, and this ended up resulting in the two of them getting divorced. And while going through the divorce proceedings, the husband started to use ChatGPT, and he himself found that he was going down a rabbit hole with it because of some guidance it was giving him. And then he didn't call a therapist in this case, he called his lawyer because it was over a legal matter. And the lawyer was like, whoa, 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 slow down. Like, this thing that you're so concerned about is not a problem. And that's just an example of how it is that, people use different terms for it, whether it's affirmation, whether it's sycophancy, whether it's glazing. The fact that, unlike a good therapist who will challenge you and who will let you know when you kind of need to be steered back maybe in a different direction, thus far, the chatbots that we have aren't doing that. They are telling you what you want to hear. They are keeping you engaged. And interestingly enough, the episode we have coming out on October 31st, we have a suicide prevention specialist who actually talks about how no one is really bringing this up, but that same sycophancy that can be so dangerous in other situations actually, and we have heard about obviously these tragedies where people have committed suicide as a result of or while they were interacting with their chatbots. But he put out a message on his TikTok and received 700 responses of people who didn't commit suicide because the affirmative nature of the chatbot convinced them that their life was still worth living, that they were good, that they did need to be here. So it's just interesting. And that's where it's hard sometimes for me when you talk about issues this serious to know exactly what to say and to still be responsible, because I don't want to encourage somebody who shouldn't be using a chatbot to use one. I don't want to discourage somebody who could maybe be benefited from it. And that, I think, is what makes this so fascinating, is we as a society simply don't have the answers yet.
Yes, we need more information. But I mean, the one thing you're talking about, people who speak to their chatbot and it's affirming, so it discourages them from suicide. But a chatbot will also answer a question like, tell me the names of the highest bridges in town. They will list them off, the 6 bridges, like you were talking about in an episode, without any questioning of why are they asking me about these 6 bridges, because that's not something that they would think of, whereas a therapist would. Or, what are some good poisons that would, be very instantaneous in their effects? Or, what are the best ways to commit suicide, in the least messy way possible? And they'll just give the answers because there's no kind of emotional reaction, and they're not connecting that this means something. So, we also have to contend with those kinds of things. So it's kind of a hit or miss. It might be affirming and prevent suicide. It might be affirming and encourage suicide. So we definitely need more information, and we also need to understand that it's not a safe modality yet, right? Because we don't understand enough about it, it's not safe. When we do drug testing, we test and test and test in order to be convinced that it's safer, that the side effects are as safe as possible given, what the benefits are. So the benefits always have to outweigh the risks. We don't know with ChatGPT if the benefits outweigh the risk. We know that there are very significant risks. Do the benefits outweigh them? There's no testing, there's no double-blind testing, there's nothing that can be done. So we don't know if this is indeed, more dangerous than it's worth.
Yeah, and that's where I think that this is so important for us as a civilization. Really, I think it's at that level to talk about this, is because there is no putting this genie back in the bottle. It's however you want to crack it up. Like, the toothpaste never goes back in the tube. And this technology moves so quickly and has been adopted so quickly. This is the fastest adopted technology on the App Store that's ever existed. Like, this is the fastest adoption of a technology that we've ever seen. And I don't think that regulation can possibly keep up with the speed of the technology. So we can't necessarily look to the government to, quote unquote, save us from it. I think we all need to be talking about how we want to interact with it, and what kind of education do we want put in place for people, because there's so much. And look, if OpenAI or one of these other companies, Anthropic, whoever it is, turns around and decides that they're going to, of their own volition, putting meaningful guardrails and listen to the public and really try to help make this technology as beneficial without the potential damages as possible, great. I'll be really surprised if that happens. I think the profit motive will outweigh that desire. Maybe I'm being cynical. I don't know, but let's be cynical and let's discuss this and let's talk about an education component for all of us to learn to use this. So here's what I like to look at is the last two technologies in my lifetime that have been truly transformative on a societal level have been the smartphone and social media. And we have failed those tests of our ability to use those technologies responsible so miserably. Like, I
Yes.
think that smartphones and social media could be great. They could connect people. They do connect people. And other technologies, like the fact that we're doing this right now via Riverside and we're able to connect instantaneously is phenomenal. Technology can be really great, but when you look at the number of people who are never going to be content in their lives because they see the fake version of other people's lives on social media, and when you see most people walking around staring down at their device, it's funny. I was talking just before you were very gracious in starting this meeting an hour late because I was actually hanging out with my mom and I was talking to her. She's not necessarily a heavy smartphone user, but her screen time was a lot higher than I would have thought. And she had someone who was over who was younger, who was 18. And I asked her what her screen time was. It was 9 hours the day before. 9 hours. So what is it? The average person is awake for something like 16 hours a day. So you're spending more than 50% of your waking hours staring at a screen. This is unbelievable. And I think a lot of society is that way. Like, I always use this same example and I always feel so judgy and terrible about it after, but I do it too. I live by a park and I see parents at the park with their little kids. Like, they could be building these memories, pushing your toddler on a swing. You're never going to get this time back. Like, my kids are getting older now. I'm never going to get that time back. And knowing that they're missing it and seeing them, whatever you're looking at on your phone is not as important as the child that is right in front of your face. But our brains just want that dopamine. We want whatever that smartphone is giving us. And before I go on a longer tangent about smartphone use and social media, I really think that this is our third opportunity to have this revolutionary technology, and I don't want to see us fail as poorly as we have before. I really want to see us implement this into our society and into our lives in a way that it benefits us more than it takes away from us.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking about a problem that always came up in my psychotherapy practice, which is that people have a tendency to want the quick and easy solution to everything. However, the quick and easy solution to everything is always the wrong solution and always tends to backfire. So when we come to smartphones, it's the quick and easy way to connect to everybody, but it actually makes us more disconnected and ultimately more lonely. Same with social media. And so here we are after these two amazing inventions, we're more lonely. There's loneliness epidemics across the world, across the globe. And because we're so lonely, here we go adopting another technology, thinking that, more of the same is going to be the right thing, which of course it's not. We're having these intense interactions with machines and we're not getting less lonely, but we are having other consequences like, psychosis, suicidality. So we need to understand that every time we look for the solution to human problems in non-human entities, it's not the right solution. If we're lonely, we have to connect with other living beings, not machines. If we're feeling alienated, we have to sort it out with, living beings, not with machines. And, machines can help us in so many ways, but it's not going to enable us to have the kinds of human connections or, real life connection, even walking in nature in a park, being with your pet. Those are also living beings, living things, and it actually feeds us emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. But when we're interacting with non-living items or objects, it doesn't do that. So we need to understand that if we want to be healed, we're going in the wrong direction. And now, let's pause for a quick word about my other podcast. I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. We all need to be inspired and uplifted these days. We need a good laugh and we need to be moved. In the Ruthless Compassion podcast, I speak with a wonderfully diverse group of people. They've overcome daunting obstacles, and they're making unique, exciting contributions to our communities and to our world. The Ruthless Compassion podcast has created more than 175 episodes over the past several years. Why not have a listen to it today?
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. And it also seems like we aren't understanding how this is going. If you think about people who were, like, gosh, the age I'm what I would call an internet native. Like I've been using the internet since I was 9 years old on a home computer, and my parents didn't understand it, but I did, and eventually they came to adopt it and understand it as well. And then there's a generation slightly younger than me who would have been like social media native, or they were using social media since, I hope not, since they were 10, but let's be realistic about it. A lot of them were. And now you've got this next generation who are AI native. And how is that? Are they going to understand the technology better and thus not fall victim to it in terms of like the psychosis and delusions that some people have? Or are they not going to realize that there can be a life outside of it, and they're just going to get sucked more into that screen, into that AI? I was asking the same young woman who's at my mom's house, I was asking her, she's in college right now, and I was asking how people her age were using ChatGPT. And she said at any moment, if she's sitting in the back of the classroom, if she looks up during a lecture, 50% of the students in that class will have ChatGPT open on their screen. And for most of them, some of them, they're having conversations with their chatbot about whatever, the workout they want to do later, or advice with friends, relationships. But a lot of those people are cheating. And she said that the amount of, and granted, this is one person's experience, but that the amount of, I guess, what would you call that? Like cognitive outsourcing that people are doing with this isn't going to make us smarter. This isn't going to make us more well-balanced humans. It's going to mean you got a good grade on material that you absolutely don't understand. And what's going to happen to us, not to sound too bleak about it, or like, or negative about a younger generation, but I don't think being social media native is necessarily good if you look at like the body image issues and anxiety and depression amongst younger people now. And then if you throw AI into that mix and an inability or lack of desire to actually learn, it's like, I use this example a lot. I lived in LA for like most of my 20s. I still, to this day, I'm 41 years old. I can get around LA without a map. No problem whatsoever. I know that city in and out because I had to learn it. And then I moved to Detroit in my 30s, and I had GPS on my phone. That was like the only difference. I've lived here for 10 years now. I can't get anywhere without my GPS because my brain never needed to learn the city. And this is a much easier city to get around than Los Angeles. So like, if I know from my own life how I was able to outsource wayfinding, what other skills are we all going to outsource, especially people that aren't learning those skills in the first place? It's really scary.
Yeah. And, learning gives us a couple of advantages at least. The first thing is that we have competence. And so we can do the job that we're hired for. And so a lot of young people are not able to do the jobs that they're getting hired for, and they're getting fired right away because, aside from the fact that all this time online gives them social difficulties, it also makes them not able to actually do the job. Even though they've graduated from a program, they don't know how to do whatever it is. The second thing is, by developing competence, you develop confidence. You develop a sense of yourself as a person who can accomplish things. And so again, the quick and easy solution is, I'm going to cheat, I'm going to get my great mark, and then I'm going to get a job, but then I can't do the job. And I also don't feel good about myself because I know I cheated. So we are actually hurting ourselves by depriving ourselves, like you said, of these skills, but also of a sense of self that's positive. Because how do you get a good sense of who you are? By doing things, by learning, by making mistakes, by learning from your mistakes, by failing, by trying again. It's by doing stuff and in the real world and developing competence. So it's a very scary thing for those of us who are getting older, and we're thinking, oh my gosh, these younger generation people are going to come into the world and they're going to be our doctors and lawyers and teachers, but they're not going to be competent. And it's also very bad for them because they're going to all be so depressed and anxious because they won't have self-esteem.
Yeah, I don't want to be like so pessimistic because I do think that there are a lot of benefits, I hope, that this technology will bring to society. I hope it's able to bring new discoveries and cures for diseases that we could only imagine. I hope it's able to find a way to help with the environmental challenges that we're facing right now. But purely from a human psychology standpoint and how we continue to develop as people and where we get the meaning in our lives from, I'm very concerned about all of that eroding as a result of our over interaction and over reliance upon this technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. Were there any surprises for you in doing this series? Like, what has surprised you in the kinds of things that you've heard from some of the experts and some of the subjects that you've spoken to?
The single most surprising thing to me was, look, we set out to do this series to look at the problems, the potential problems that are coming from the interaction of AI in the human mind, because I wanted to look for solutions and find out what questions we weren't asking. But what I think was really interesting is this next episode that we have coming out, episode 4. We talk to people who have like profoundly positive relationships with their AI companions. And that to me was the most surprising thing, is I needed to realize, like, I had to keep my own mind open, that while you're looking for problems, sometimes you accidentally find a real benefit of the technology. And I thought that was so cool. It was so much fun for me to talk to the two people in the episode and hear the way that they're using this technology in what I think is such a healthy way of saying, we recognize it for what it is, and we're using it in a way, like one guy, Kevin, he's a suicide prevention specialist in the Army, and he talks to people every day who are suicidal, and he doesn't want to bring that baggage home to his wife every night. And so one of the things he's able to do is to offload on his AI companion. And these are all the things I heard about today. This is what I dealt with. So by the time he gets home and he wants to have dinner with his wife, he's able to, instead of dealing with everything that he's dealing with from the result of these clients he has who he cares deeply about, he's just able to sit down with his wife and ask how her day is. And then Mary is one of the other people in the episode. She is able to learn more about herself and her own relationships with other humans and be a better human partner to the other people in her life because of what she gets from her AI companion, Simon. So that to me, that was like so inspiring and exciting to see that, okay, there is maybe a light at the end of this tunnel with the right guardrails in place and with the right education around this technology, that even just from a mental health standpoint, there's a way that these chatbots can be really beneficial. We just need to keep it going in this direction. And so that to me was so surprising and so interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm wondering, as you're speaking, I'm wondering like who is going to set up those guardrails? Is the individual user supposed to be responsible for setting up the guardrails? Because in that case, it's not going to be very successful. So who is going to be responsible for creating that safety?
It should absolutely be the companies that are making the technology. I like to look at the auto industry. I know you brought up the pharmaceutical industry, which Joel Gold did as well. He uses the example, like Eli Lilly can't just put out a drug and see how many people it harms once it's out in the world. They spend millions of dollars on testing and make sure that it's not harmful, because they will be held liable if it harms people when it's out in society. And I think with this technology, I've been using the analogy of the auto industry. Like, people don't often talk about how wildly unsafe cars used to be. There was this great New York Times headline, I forget what year it was, but it called automobiles murder machines, because there weren't stoplights. There were cars and horse-drawn carriages and pedestrians all occupying the same dirt roads together in Manhattan. And like, the story was that people were losing control of their motor vehicles and they were running innocent people over on the sidewalks. And now if I look outside my window right now, what do I see? I see that you can only park going in one direction on the street, so everyone knows which direction to drive on. I see stop signs, I see stoplights, I see speed limits. There are also traffic schools. So it's this combination of laws, of regulation, and of, in the case of the auto industry, the industry itself. It took way too long, but it took about 60 years, and then that Ralph Nader book, Unsafe at Any Speed, came out. And the auto industry was so afraid of being regulated in the way that the government was going to want to regulate them that they actually stepped up and said, we are going to do seat belts. We are going to do shatterproof glass. We are going to do airbags. We are going to improve braking. We're going to do all these things to make our technology safer. And they did it. And it was a combination of improving the technology itself and improving education around use of the technology. And then obviously the government does a lot in terms of regulation and laws as well. So I do think it's going to take people wanting that educational component. I think it's going to take the AI industry wanting to put those guardrails in and realizing that I ultimately believe it will be better for them. It will be better for their bottom line if they make a product that's safe. I would hope so, because it's going to be sustainable. It's everybody's worried about the AI bubble right now. Well, how do you prevent an AI bubble? Make people actually love, rely on, want, and like love this technology. And they're going to do that if it's safe. If we're not talking about suicide and psychosis every week, right? If we're talking about the benefits that people can get from it. And then obviously the government's going to have to step in and create some regulation at some point, but that's going to take years. And right now, this technology is advancing by the week. We don't have years. So that's the one space where I'm not very optimistic. It's not even that I'm pessimistic about it. I just think the speed of government is so much slower than the speed of technology and the speed of human adoption at this point, that it's really the companies and all of us as individuals saying, we want to make sure that this aligns with our values and with the way that we want our lives to be directed. We let smartphones and social media into our lives, trusting those companies and their products, and we failed ourselves. I just don't want to see that happen again.
Yeah, and I think we have, like, as you said, we have precedent from these other devices or these other technological innovations, and we need to understand where they led us. And this is even more powerful and more far reaching. And we can, if we're smart, foresee something not good and understand that we need to protect people from the potential pitfalls. But are we going to do it? Do we have the will? Do the companies have the will to do it? I mean, if 1 billion people are using it already, do they mind if 10 million go crazy? And can we prove that those 10 million people have gone crazy because of the technology? So they may be willing to have 1% of their users have delusions. That might be an acceptable risk, just like with the car manufacturers. It's an acceptable risk that X amount of people die in car crashes every year, right? So how do we ensure that it is safe for the consumer?
That's such a, I don't know why I'm laughing, gallows humor, I suppose. It is such a dystopian thing to think that there is a group of people somewhere that is having a discussion about how many suicides are acceptable, how many cases of psychosis are acceptable. And these conversations are happening. And if the answer is anything greater than 0, I think we need to say that's unacceptable. This technology didn't exist 3 years ago. It exists now. This is a new potential. And again, whoever wants to can debate all day whether the AI is filling the content of these people's delusions or whether it's in some way contributing to their delusions. To me, it appears as though a lot of these people would not have become delusional at this time if not for their use of this technology. It does seem that, I guess what the word would be, causality.
The trigger. Yeah.
The trigger. Yeah, it's there to an extent, I think, but anybody can debate that. But what you can't debate is OpenAI is even talking about, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but how many people using this technology are delusional or psychotic while they're using it. They have the data. They know that it's happening. And if it's preventing suicides, phenomenal. Let's keep doing that. Let's tune it to make sure that it continues to prevent suicides while not encouraging it. Like you referenced, Nick Haber's work where they said, I lost my job today. What are the 6 tallest bridges in New York City? If it can solve these advanced calculus problems, it needs to be able to say, there is there is a connection between a person saying they lost their job and wondering where these tall bridges are. That just doesn't seem like that much of a leap, especially if it has this advanced understanding of human language. It should also have some understanding of the thought component of language and understand that those two things are related, that you should not give this person that information.
Exactly. Well, I guess we will find out how things go because it's going so quickly. I think we're going to get a lot more information in a not very long period of time, and then we'll be able to maybe have another conversation in a year or two and see how dystopic or hopefully not the situation is.
Yeah, I would love nothing more than to be having this conversation in a year and say, remember all those things that we were worried about? How silly that seems now because we solved the problems. We made it great. And I think there is I don't know, I like to hope that there's an optimistic version of our society where enough people want things to be great and enough people who are in positions to where they can make a difference on these topics really care. And like I also think too, it's like I can be cynical about the profit motive, but I would hope that at this point, like those companies have achieved that, right? The people that are in decision making positions at these AI companies right now have made so much money, lifetimes worth, generations worth of money over the past 3 years. And at some point, I really hope that you would say, I can't spend all this money. I can make the world a better place. And I do believe that this technology has the potential to make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that these people are able to think the same way and to think that this isn't just about making sure that more people use the technology and that more people engage with the technology. We don't need to create more addicts of more types of technology in our world. What we need to do is try to make human lives better. And maybe I'm being Pollyanna-ish, maybe I'm being overly utopian, but I do truly hope that that's where this goes and where this takes us, and that all of our fears are unfounded.
Yeah, and maybe we can say, let's hope that they have at least some enlightened self-interest. So instead of becoming the richest person on the planet, maybe they can become, the winner of the next Nobel Prize, and they can, be called the person who solved the hunger problem on the planet, or the war problem, or the disease problem, and they can win all the awards and become the heroes of the planet, and get to walk around being celebrated in that way for having solved these problems. Maybe that could be a motivating factor instead of profit. And I don't mind at all, give them all the prizes, let them walk around feeling like they're the best person on the earth for solving the problem. If they solve the problem, they can get all the awards. I'm happy with that. So that's what I'm hoping for, even if it's a little bit more of a cynical attitude. If that's what it takes, if they switch from being motivated by greed to being motivated by ego, great. As long as they're doing good for the world, I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And like maybe that's what we need to do is we need to start celebrating our Nobel Prize winners more and more publicly and get back to a world where public intellectuals are celebrated. Like, yeah, what is wrong with that, right? Everybody has an ego. Appeal to people's ego in this other way where your achievements and how you bettered mankind, that's what we care about. That's what we want to celebrate, not just have these stupid lists of who has more money they can't spend than somebody else.
Exactly. Let them be the one who solved X, Y, or Z problem for the world, and they get the bragging rights. I'm all for that. Let each of them have their bragging rights for solving every different problem. Fabulous.
I'm on board too. You've won me over very quickly.
Well, Sean King O'Grady, it's been really wonderful talking with you today about this series, Suspicious Minds, and I'm looking forward to watching the next episodes.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Marsha. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. And there will be episodes every Friday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you get podcasts.
This is Dr. Marcia Sirota. Thanks for listening to the Real Mental Podcast. Please leave a review and your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter at marciasirotamd.com. And while you're at it, why not check out my Ruthless Compassion podcast with over 180 episodes and counting. If you have any ideas for guests for either Real Mental or Ruthless Compassion podcasts, please email us at info@marciasirotamd.com. Happy listening.